Hi, this is Ricky Spencer and welcome to another episode of Quest by Community, Our Health Matters. And today we're going to tackle some issues around media, especially what is Instagram and why do we still so obsessed about having an Instagram account in 2025? And with us today, we're very fortunate to be speaking with Jessica Leonard, who is a media specialist.
Such a joy to be here with you, and I've gotten to know you so well through another project that we're working on, so being able to be here and speak with you today is really fantastic. Thank you.
So let's start the journey with you, Jessica. What got you interested to be involved in media?
Yeah, I guess that I first started working in media when I had young children. So my children are now 18 and 15 years old. So I'm 40, in case anybody's wondering. People are always saying, oh, you don't look like you're old enough. I am. I'm 40 years old. So when my children were young, I was looking for some volunteering to do. And I, for a very long time now, have volunteered with the Australian Breastfeeding Association. I joined their public relations team and have done a lot of social media management through them as well. So did social media management through them for about 10 years, I think, and really loved the work that I was doing in the community, embedding media and sort of health and bringing all of those things together to send a message and put that out to the community. When my kids were old enough that I was able to return to formal education, that's what I decided to go with, is to go with media, because I was kind of weighing up whether I wanted to do a health degree or a media degree. But I went, you know what? The media stuff looks really fun. And for me, I treated university as like a big holiday from my life. And it was great. I had a great time learning all about media and producing media and all of these different skills that I can kind of fold into all of these things that I'm already doing in the community.
When you undertook your qualification, was that at the time before we had all these influences and that in that we have now?
So I started my degree in 2018 and finished in 2022. So having already done a lot of work in media and social media for a good 10 years leading up to doing the degree and kind of formalising that qualification, I really got to watch the progression of the influencer culture. And by the time that I was learning media at university, it was very, very strong at that point that influencers was the big buzzword, and that's what everybody wanted to do. Everybody wanted to work with influencers, brands wanted to work with influencers, and it was very much at the time where that was kind of skyrocketing.
I want to unpack this about influencer culture because we have a lot of people who always out there in the community who think, oh, you know, I want to become an influencer. And I know in the LGBTIQ community especially, I've known people who feel like, or they call themselves an influencer. What, from your perspective, what is an influencer and why do we have to be careful with that sort of wording?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think it's something that people don't necessarily unpack before they claim that identity. So I think when we're talking about influencers, what we're looking at is how many people does their content reach, and what are they saying, and what change are they making to the people that they're reaching. So if I was an influencer from the trans community, I might be looking at just my existence online as being part of an influencer culture. Are the people around me understanding what it's like to be trans, or at least a very small part of it, because of what I'm posting online? And I think that that's where we can look at it and go, influencer culture has a real opportunity to be a really positive thing. And for a lot of people, I think that has been the case. I know for a lot of young people that I speak to, they talk about TikTok, and that's the big buzzword at the moment. But a lot of people are saying that they turn to TikTok because there's at least some element of authenticity to it. They're hearing people's real stories. So maybe they're just getting their first period and they turn to TikTok to find out whether this is normal. Because yes, you can Google something. Yes, you can go to Wikipedia, but hearing a story from a person feels very different.
One of the areas that I'm interested in and involved in is in the health equity space.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people, you know, we want to hear about people's experiences of health services, good and bad. but we're mainly of what needs to be improved on. What do you think are some of the perils when you start to, I guess, disclose aspects of your life to an unknown audience that you need to be considered?
I'm going to touch on a little bit about health, because that's really when it comes to social media, that's one of my big areas of interest. So one of the things that I do is I produce a podcast about breastfeeding, and I've worked as a social media manager for health advocacy organisations. And I think that when we're looking at influencers in that space, is that there is no requirement for influencers to give evidence-based information. They can give anecdotal information, and I think to a certain extent, there's actually not a problem with someone giving an anecdote of their own life that's not completely rooted in evidence. They're just telling their own story. But when we're looking at that sphere of influence of how many people are hearing that story and thinking that's the normal experience when it's not evidence-based, that's when we can run into a little bit of difficulty in going, okay, what are we actually doing with this content here? So there has been a lot of push to have the platforms themselves be part of that process of making sure that we had the fact checks and things like that. But we've also seen that that's very readily been dismantled in a lot of parts of the world as well. And the fact checking has just gone by the wayside. So it really can allow misinformation and disinformation to just escalate very quickly.
Now, I want to ask you this question that everyone keeps asking me when I knew that you were coming on. And that is it true that people can buy Instagram people, like having inflate your numbers? Is that true, or is that
is absolutely true? Yes. So there's a lot of places that you can go online and purchase Instagram followers. So look, it's quite difficult to tell whether people have done that. Sometimes you can go through their follower list and pick out, oh, that one's probably not real and that's a bot. But for the most part, those numbers of followers that people have, you don't really know what percentage of those are real, genuine people who are just having their own personal Instagram account, and how many are bots that have been created and bought and sold. So there certainly have been instances where that, has caused issues, I think, on social media. But yeah, it's absolutely something that happens. I
know one of your areas, Jessica, that you have done in the past is worked in youth settings and schools, or interest in that area. What sort of practical information would you give to teachers today in primary and secondary schools? Because we know there's, and maybe you can explain to our audience who aren't aware about changes to who can have accounts of media, how there is a change. Maybe let's do that first.
Yeah.
Can a young person under 16 have an Instagram account?
So that has recently changed in Australia. So that is no longer the case that a person under the age of 16 can have an Instagram account.
Okay.
I think the things that, and I'm a mum, I've got 2 teenagers, and so I've lived through this as well as, having done workshops with young people with media skills. And what I would say is that we should not assume that law prevents children from accessing social media. We all have a responsibility to keep our children safe, but it would be naive to say that just because we have introduced a law that children cannot have a social media account before the age of 16, that they are not absorbing that content. When I was that age, I was reading my book under the bed with a flashlight, and my parents didn't know about it. Young people are smart and they are tech savvy, and they will find a way around it. So instead of panicking about that, I think we just need to look at it a little bit more pragmatically and start having those conversations with young people about the fact that a lot of content on social media, especially now, it's not real to life. It's, even if we look at a very pure Instagram account where maybe an influencer is posting where they've gone to the beach and had a lovely time with their friends, that they've probably set that up as a photo shoot, and maybe that's just one small portion of their day. Maybe it rained 5 minutes later. Maybe they had an argument with their girlfriend. It's not a realistic depiction of life. And we need to look at it the way we look at, maybe big budget movies, that they're kind of something that's fun and entertaining, but it can be a challenge to get that balance right with young people.
When you were saying that, I was thinking, Jessica, of myself when I was young, watching, say, like the Brady Bunch, and then wishing so much I could be part of that family. That uniqueness of everyone having fun, going out, sharing meals. And I wonder whether young people in some ways look to Instagram, as you were saying, capturing a moment so that they desperately want to be a part of. And are you sort of mentioning to us now that, well, that staged, the notion of something being staged, the use of AI. How can we work with young people, perhaps, and schools? Do you think that we need to have people sort of like yourselves who are specialists in this area, perhaps talk to teachers on how to embed that in the curriculum to be able to decipher what's real and what's not real?
I think there is a lot of good work that's being done in this space, and even in the spaces that surround social media. So one example would be that some schools are doing workshops with young boys and young men to dismantle toxic masculinity, because we know that can cook and bubble and boil in the fringes of the internet. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are worried about at the moment. But I think that anything that helps to dismantle toxic masculinity with our young people is a really positive step. And I think that we shouldn't just be telling our young people what to do. It needs to be a conversation with young people that they probably know more about social media even than me. I have a minor in social media and in my degree, and like I said, have a lot of experience in social media management. But I know that there are going to be things that my teenage children know about social media that I just don't know, because it's happening in their community with their peers, and I'm not part of that.
What about the question that I get asked sometimes by parents who say to me, I don't want my child using Instagram or that because they're saying to me that they're trans or they're gay, but what if they change their mind and then it's a footprint? What would your response be to those parents?
In some way, it is healthy to be cautious about what young people are posting online. And I think that we have to remember that young people are more savvy about this than we are. They understand that if they want to post something that they don't want their mum to see and they want to send it to their friend, they're going to send it on Snapchat because the messages disappear. It's not a flawless system. Someone can just take a photo of it, but they're thinking about it a lot more than their parents are, and they are more informed than their parents are in a lot of cases. So I think that whenever I hear someone say, oh, but they want to be trans, and what if they change their mind later? I think, what if they do? And that's great. Everybody should have the right to be who they feel like they are in that moment, at every moment in their life. And we should be embracing that and celebrating it from a young age.
To add to that now further, what would you say to those people, I guess perhaps some people of my generation, who sometimes are a little bit hesitant of these digital platforms, that they say, oh, but when you get 18 and you're going to go for a job, are we being overzealous in terms of what people put on their screens and their devices at an early age? Do you feel that we should really realise that kids will be kids and it's just a natural part of human nature that people will say things?
My advice for young people who are going into the media industry is to, before they start applying for jobs, they need to do a digital deep clean.
Oh, okay.
So go back through, you find your old Twitter account. If you're someone my age, go back to MySpace. That's a bit of a throwback for those of us who are in our 40s and over. But these are not new problems. These are problems that are now existing in a digital world, and they're existing in a digital way. And yes, it can exacerbate those problems, but we know that people have always done stupid things when they were young, and it hasn't stopped people from getting jobs. Like, we used to hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, if you get a tattoo, you'll never be able to get a job. It's like, well, all of the young people I know who are over 18 are getting tattoos, and at a certain point, and I think we're there, everybody's got them. And you can't just not give someone a job because they've got tattoos, because who are you going to get to work for you? And I think probably doing silly things on the internet is probably in that category. And as long as people are aware of it, and we're having those conversations with young people when we're giving them that access and giving them those digital screens that they can engage with other people with, that's the best that we can do. Because I think that the concern that I sometimes have is, having met so many young people who have found their people and found their identity and become happy and fulfilled human beings by finding a community of people online. I was certainly one of those people, you know, even back in the 90s when we were all on internet forums instead of this. This is not a new problem. We are looking at the same problem at a bigger scale.
You were mentioning before that people tell their life stories or snippets of their where they're at in terms what they're up to. We know that you've just recently created and developed a film.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about this film project?
So this is something that I've just started doing as a passion project. I am trained in the sort of traditional process of making film, but I am really passionate about stories that are not necessarily getting told. And you were one of the people that I reached out to at the start of this process and asked if you would be interested in being interviewed. So you're kind of the centerpiece for this short film that I'm still in the process of kind of finishing off now that we've finished filming. And it's really just, you know, knowing that community TV has been really important to you, to give you a platform. And there's not necessarily that many platforms for someone who has the identities that you have in your life. And I am always looking at telling interesting stories that haven't been told. And you as a person are just one of the most interesting people I know. And I know that, yes, I do, yeah. People who have watched your show will know that you very frequently just say something that's just incredibly profound, and it just leaves you going, wow, that's amazing. So being able to come into your home and, you know, be with your animals and your objects and hear some of your story has been pretty fantastic. So a lot of the work that I've done on this short film has taken all of the ways that I was taught to make film and just, you know, thanks, not for me.
I just wanted to reflect on that too, because I wanted to ask you, like, for me, it was a journey of, you know, disclosure, but because I'd already known you in the relationship I have, it made it so much easier. But for the audience, in terms of what do you feel that the audience can get out of it in terms of seeing the story, like in terms of reflecting for their own life?
What I hope is that for this film that it does two main things. So one thing is for your community, for the trans community, is that I want you and your community to see that someone like me who's, you know, I'm just a mum in the suburbs, but I see you and I think your story is really important and I really value you and I value your story. So that's for your, you know, it's my love letter to your community of just saying, I see you and I think you're wonderful. The other thing is, you know, if this is something that can reach other non-trans communities and just humanize, you know, we've got so much of this rhetoric that's really hateful around trans people that ignores the humanity of, like, this, if you're talking to a trans person, they are a person, and a lot of the hate that people are trying to whip up and the fear mongering takes that out of it. So that's really, it's just a little story about your life and, you know, wondering what your future is going to hold. But I hope that, it's my hope that people will be able to see your humanity.
That's so beautiful. I mean, one of the things I wanted to say to the listeners is one of the reasons why I agreed is I wanted to show the plight of housing for older trans people, you know, my age and older, the struggles it is in finding affordable and safe housing. Because it's interesting that we have on the media that they talk about affordable, sustainable, but very rare do they mention the word safe. Yes. And that's something I feel that, you know, I wanted to bring across to you and within the film to show that a home is not just four walls, but it's within the confines of that space is also that you can walk out of those four walls and not be physically or verbally abused. And that's something that for many of us, we still have a fear that we need to consider. Going on with the work that you're just doing there, what message would you like to send to young people who are listening who think, yeah, I'd like to be involved in filmmaking? How do I do this, Jessica? You know, yes, I want to become a filmmaker. I've doing my year 12 or, year 11, and I'm really passionate. Where do I start?
There's a lot of different ways to look at it. If most of the people who work in the commercial film industry have come through film schools, through universities, or through sort of private film schools. But there's a lot of other ways to make film and make content as well. So you don't need to put yourself into that box and say, I must go to a fine arts film school and learn all of the traditional ways of doing it. That you can just start going out there and being comfortable. And one of the things that I always was grateful with you every time I've spoken to you for this project is that I prefer to not go out and shoot with a big crew of people. It was either just me on my own or me plus one extra person. But I know that actually really helped you to tell your story. If I brought in 15 people into your house, we would not have had the conversations that we had. It's just not possible. And I was really grateful that you and I just happened to align on that's how we both kind of are most comfortable. And yeah, the film so far, having looked at what I've got so far, it's like, I think that it's really made a big difference of just saying, yes, this is how a traditional film is made, that you would have a sound person, a lighting person, a gaffer, a director, a producer, an assistant director, all of those people would be on the set. And I just went, no, just me. I'll just do all of it. It's fine. And sometimes, yes, there can be some technical things that can suffer a little bit, but what you can get is those real stories with people. And that was what I really wanted to do with you.
One of the things that, as you know, I'm passionate is about disability inclusion and visibility. Myself being autistic and having a number of mental health conditions and physical disabilities. One of the things I want to highlight to the work that you can do, in that, especially as a previous teacher myself, going into special schools, that you'd be able to perhaps in the future, someone like you could go and help and run a seminar or for the teachers in service or with the kids. And I'm thinking, is that something you think is important, to have kids with disabilities tell their own stories through their own lens?
Yes, absolutely. So key. And yeah, being able to have that self-determination and telling your own story is so vital. But I've done a lot of work in, some of the jobs that I've had where I've worked and done media workshops with young people. So things like teaching them how to use Foley in a studio, which is where if someone in a movie gets punched in the face, it doesn't sound like a punch in the face. It's actually someone punching a lettuce. So that sort of stuff with kids. And let me tell you that the ones who disclosed to me that they were neurodivergent, they loved all of this really hands-on stuff. We'd get them to go out and interview people. We'd get them, teach them how to use a camera. And they really just thrived in this environment where they were trusted to do something. It was something a little bit interesting. They could decide how they wanted to tell their stories and they could play and have fun with it. So I think that there's absolutely space to have more media skills being taught to people with disabilities to allow them to tell their own stories. There's a lot of really good work being done in this space. So one organisation is called Bus Stop Films, and they are a short film production company, and they have a development program for people with disabilities, and they teach them how to crew the short film. And it's fantastic. We had a representative of Bus Stop Films come to a film festival that I produced a couple of weeks ago and speak about the work that they do. So I would love to see more work being done in this space. I know that there's a show on CTV Plus called All In by Coward Media, which is a similar kind of model. All of the people who hosted the show, as well as produced it behind the scenes, were all people with disabilities. So I think that from what I've seen, it just really helps people to thrive, to be able to tell their own story in that way.
I think there's such a need for it too, isn't it? For people to be authentic and be allowed to be themselves through that medium that other people take for granted. I think that's the one thing that I, having not been a teacher now for a couple of years, but I wonder now whether parents with kids who have additional learning needs have a fear of giving their young adults, access to things like Instagram, Facebook, other tools to connect. Do you feel that there should be some more outside training for families and schools to give that kind of like, I guess when we learn to drive, we learn about the pros and cons of the laws, the roadmaps. Do you feel we should have maybe like some sort of system of teaching our kids, or sorry, young adults, and that the skills about how to navigate those social media tools?
Absolutely. I think that there is some work that's being done in this space at local council level. So a lot of local councils are doing parent information sessions about social media, and I think that they're kind of trying to target it at that age just before they start doing it, which is great. But I'm not too sure what's happening in mainstream schools with that at the moment. So I know that, a few years ago, the law came in Victoria before everywhere else in Australia that students in schools are not allowed to have phones on them at all during the day. So they have to be put away, otherwise it gets taken off them. And I think that was a really positive move in a lot of ways. But I do always have concerns about things like people getting their communication tools taken away from them, particularly with children with disabilities. If someone's feeling like they're not quite normal, if they're feeling like their parents aren't listening to them, that's a real escapism. And I know a lot of people have said that was what Ben TV was to them when they were a young person and watching it on TV, that there was this revolutionary show that let people from the LGBTQIA plus community talk and tell their stories and make television and be on free to air TV. Isn't it great that we have more of that now with digital tools? And we should be looking not just at ways to shut that down, but ways to make it safer for everyone.
Absolutely. Look, it's been such a pleasure hearing you. I can feel the enthusiasm and the honesty that comes from you, because you really care. What's on the horizons for you for the next 6 to 12 months?
Great question. I've always got a couple of projects on the way. Very early in the works at the moment, that looking at starting a panel TV show here on Channel 31, which would be great because I just love community television. I love community and I love television. So I'm always very happy to be involved with Channel 31 in any way that I can. I am hoping to create some workshops for young people and people with disabilities for things like podcasting. So podcasting is like such a great medium to get into, and to be able to teach people those skills of how to make a podcast engaging is not as easy as recording audio and putting it on the internet. That's the hard part. So that's what I would love to be able to do, and just help people tell their own stories.
Jessica, Leonard, it's been an absolute honour and privilege to have you speak, and we'll definitely include some of the contact links for you. So if anyone's interested, or put in an expression of interest, a young person or their family that might want their young ones to learn about podcasting. So when you start running the groups, I mean, I can thoroughly recommend you, because I think, your training, your years of expertise, but most importantly, your compassion and genuineness to work with the person is just so outstanding. Thank you for giving us a real deep dive on some of the perils of social media, and really understanding to kind of sit back a bit, have a look at your Instagram, and maybe have those conversations with your children and your friends and relationships to say, hey, let's keep it real. Do you really need that filter? Do you really need to stage that? And let's bring reality and realism back into Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for listening to Quest by Community, Our Health Matters, and even Instagram and Facebook and social media are part of Our Health Matters.